Welcome back to Arcade. I am Super Tommy, and in this video, we're going to do a parallax background in Phaser 3. So a parallax background looks like this if you're not familiar. You've probably seen this in games before, where we use different layers to create a depth effect when you scroll across it. So you see here the mountains in the background move slower than the trees in the middle ground, and then the ground where the character walks on moves slower than the trees, and then the weeds here, which are closer to us, move faster than the ground. So this is a parallax effect. You can see other examples here on Wikipedia. It's been used since 1982, I think, on the game Moon Patrol. So we're using assets from itch from Marwa MJ. So this is where we got the assets from. And there's other great backgrounds as well on itch, on this person's itch. So you can go check out different backgrounds to use. But the key here is that the backgrounds are cut up into different layers. So a background layer, a middle ground layer, and then a foreground layer. And then we take all those layers and move them at different speeds to produce this sort of parallax effect, right? Which looks kind of cool. So now our project is set up using the Phaser 3 parcel template that you can find at the Arcade GitHub. That's github.com/arcade. And we've actually updated this template. If you've used it before, we've added ESLint to help make our JavaScript code better. Just checks for some common problems you may come across so you can avoid potential bugs. So we created this project that we're going to use using this template, so you can go there to use it to follow along exactly if you'd like. Now we're also going to use modern JavaScript in this video. So if you're not familiar with modern JavaScript, you can also go to arcade.co and check out this totally free ebook we have where we go through creating an infinite jumper game in Phaser 3 with modern JavaScript. So it's about 60 some odd pages, and it takes you through making a whole game in modern JavaScript if you're interested in that. All right, so now let's start making this parallax effect. So we've got this example code that we already have, but we're going to start from a brand new scene and show you how to do it from scratch. So we'll go call this parallax scene.js, and we're going to make this scene under our scenes folder. Now we've already imported these assets here in our public folder in public assets, and it's split up in here. So there's ground, mountains, the trees. Oh no, this is the actual plants. The plateau is the trees and this little, I guess, plateau, and the background sky. So these are all from this itch account. Now, here's our parallax scene. So let's create a scene. So let's say import Phaser from Phaser. So this is relatively standard. We're going to create a new class called parallax scene, extending from phaser.scene. Okay. Let's give it a constructor, super parallax scene. Then we will have to preload our background images, and then we will create them in the create method. So now we've got our scene. Let's go back. We'll go to our main.js, and then import the scene and let Phaser know that we want to use it. So we're going to actually not bother using our parallax demo scene, just use this parallax scene. Now it should just be blank, just a black screen. Here it is, there's nothing here. So first we want to preload our images. So that's very simply this.load.image. And so we have background. Just expand this. Let's make this code bigger. There we go. Background. And it's going to be at assets, background, no sky. Sky.png, let's just call it the sky. All right, so let's just try this out. So this.add.image, we're going to add it just right in the middle. So let's just store the width and height. Up here, we'll be using these variables several times here. So this is the scale.height, and I don't need to be this big. Shrink me. Okay, so we got width, height, so we're gonna put it right in the middle. So that's width times half, or half width, and half height. It's half height. And then the sky background that we're loading. So we should get this blue sky. So that's working. Now let's load the rest of our images. So we're going to have a mountain that comes right in front of the sky. So mountain, and then assets mountains.png. Let's just load it. This.add.image. Okay, so for the mountain, because we're going to scroll these, right? So it'll be much easier if we, instead of using the middle, so in phaser images and sprites that we add by default have a pivot point or an origin point at 0.5, 0.5, or the middle of the image. So for like the sky, it's the middle. So that's why when we added it, we just did width times half and height times half so that we stick it smack in the middle of the scene. But to make our lives easier when we're trying to calculate parallax and we need to basically put one mountain, and then when we scroll too far, or we will scroll far, we need to put another mountain so that we don't end up with mountain, 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 nothing, right? So instead, we're going to put it at 0, 0, at least for now. We may have want to adjust from the bottom, but let's just go 0, 0, and mountain. And then we're going to do set origin 0, 0, 0. So 0, 0 would be the top left. Right, so here's our mountain. So top left, because this mountain graphic, as you can see, right, top left would be over here. And it is going to be smaller than the background and smaller than the game in general. So we actually want to anchor it to the bottom left. So we can do it a couple of ways. Let's just close this. So let's try, actually, if we did this, then we want it at height. Right, let's see. Oh, there we go. So now it's at the bottom left corner of the world. So when we start moving, or when we start adding more mountains in it so that we know that we're not going to run out of mountains, we can just put it at width, whatever this width is, the X will be this width for the second one. So the first one's at 0, and then the next one is at width, whatever the width of this picture is. Well, you'll see it better as we keep going, and when we do the scrolling, you'll see. Okay, so that's mountain. This.load.image. So let's see mountains. Now we want the plateau. Plateau assets. Plateau. This is definitely one of these harder words to spell. Plateau. Okay, let's add the plateau. That add image 0. We also want height. Plateau. And then we will, of course, set origin here to 0 and 1. Here's our plateau in front of our mountains. Okay, next. Image. After the plateau is going to be our ground. Assets ground.png. Now let's add the ground. This.add.image. Same thing. Ground. Set origin 0, 1. Okay, so here's our ground, right? This is looking like a scene is coming together. So last thing, let's add these plants. So this.load.image, I'm gonna call these plants. Assets plant.png. This.add.image 0 height plants set origin 0, 1. And here's our plant. So now our scene is complete. We can compare it against here, right? This picture. It's going to be small, well, a little bit bigger. You can see it looks like this, which basically looks like what we have. Perfect. So now when we scroll, we're going to want it to move at different speeds. So first, let's just set up the camera here. Well, do we need to? Not yet. We will use the camera to move. So we're going to move the camera in update. So let's actually get our cursor keys. We don't need this anymore. So this dot cursors, this dot input dot keyboard dot create cursor keys. So now you just use these cursor keys to move characters around. We're not going to have a character, but we'll use the arrow keys to move our camera horizontally. So there's our cursor keys. Now we'll update. So if this dot cursors dot left dot is down, we are going to want to move the camera left. So let's just say move left. And then else if this dot cursors dot right dot is down, move right. Okay. Which means we want to move the main camera, which is in this dot cameras dot main. So this is the main camera. So moving left means we're going to scroll X. We're going to subtract because left is going this way. And going right is positive, going left is negative. So we're going to do minus equals. Let's just set a speed here. Let's say 3. Speed, and then if we're moving right, that would be the opposite. Instead of subtracting, we're going to add. Okay, let's just see what this does. All right, as you can see, everything moves together now, right? So, but we've got it moving. Ta-da. Now, we also want it to move a specific amount. So we don't want the camera to like do this basically, right? This is no good. So let's just, and in your game, you'll probably want this too. Dot main dot set bounds. So set bounds. So this is the bounds of which the camera will move in. So the left 0, so it won't go past right here, this left 0 bounds here. And then let's just make up a number. 2048, let's say, right? That's the total width. No, that's Y. Sorry. 0 width 2048. And then the height can just be the screen height. Oh, actually, we can just say let's move 3 screen widths. All right, so we're pressing left, and we can't go any further left. We go right. We can keep going, and we're going to go 3 screen widths. That's what we did. So it's going to pass these pictures. We won't see them. We won't do that. So now they're not moving at different speeds, as you can see. Now, to make them move at different speeds, we use the set scroll factor method of game objects, or these images and sprites have them. Set scroll factor. And you got X and Y. So in the case of our background, we don't want it to move at all. So just 0. Now let's see. There we go. The background now does not move, but everything else does. So what we're going to want to do is basically move everything at increasingly more speed, the closer it is to the player or the camera. So let's just go set scroll factor. Let's just say the mountains are going to move at 1/4 speed. And then let's say the plateau moves at half speed. The ground, well, it should move at 1 speed, assuming that's where the character is going to be. And then the plants, which is in front of the ground, would just move at, let's say, 1 1/4 speed. So let's see. And there we go. See, that's the basic parallaxing you see. But obviously, because things move at different speeds, our plants here are going to fly way, way off before the mountain ends here. Now, this is what I was talking about before, where we need to repeat these images multiple times so that we can have a seamless look when we scroll, since things move at different speeds. Right, so the mountain will connect. Now, usually when you find any parallax backgrounds that are made to parallax, they will do this, where they can basically repeat horizontally well. They can be looped, let's say. So let's just do this manually, and then we're gonna make a helper function to make this much easier to do. So let's just go with the mountains. So we're gonna add another mountain. Let's just write it out. We're gonna add another mountain, image. So now instead of 0, 0 is over here on the left. We're going to want width. like I was saying. And then height, and then mountains. And then we're gonna use the same um, changes that we did for set origin, make it left and down. So bottom left, and the same scroll factor. So, and then it starts at width. So we'll scroll here, you'll see. All right, you watch those mountains. Oh, we must have typed something in wrong. Mountain. Let's try that again. Oh, no, we don't want the width of the screen. Well, I'll just show you. Want the width of the actual texture. So see, that did not quite align correctly. So we want the width of this guy. So let's just say M for mountain, right? And then we can do M dot width. It's going, and right there. So you don't actually see, you shouldn't, where it's added. It's fairly seamless. All right, that looks pretty good. So now that's the mountain. So we want to do this for every one of these layers. Now writing it out like this would be less than ideal, especially if you don't actually know how long or how wide your game screen is going to be. So let's just focus on this right here. These guys, this two. So this is creating two. So if we can make two, we can make three, you can make four, you can make any number you want, you can define it. Let's make a function up here at the top of this file. We're going to call this create. I'm going to call this create aligned. You can name it something else, maybe create looped or create spaced. But basically, this is going to create them one after the other, one next to each other. Yeah. Okay, we'll think about what the parameters we want. So what we're going to do is let's just take this code. We just need one of these. Just take one of these. Okay, so we know for sure we're going to want the scene to be passed in so that we can do scene.add. And then we're going to want to know how many. So let's say count because we want two. And we want we need height. We can get it from the scene. Then we want to know the texture image, in case mountain, the key that we're going to use. And that's good. And then the scroll factor, because that changes. Scroll factor. So, okay, let's see. We'll just use that as a reference. We're going to just rewrite the code out. So scene. Oh, so to get some more help from Visual Studio Code, we're going to use JSDoc here and tell the Visual Studio what our parameters are going to be. So the first one is the phaser scene. This is that was count as a number, texture is a string, and scroll factor is a number. So this gives us code completion. So scene.add, right? Dot image, and we're going to want to put it at, it's not necessarily 0, but let's just do 0. And we're going to do scene.scale.height, and then the texture key, set origin, 0, 1, and then set scroll factor is going to be whatever the passing scroll factor is. Okay, so this creates one thing. So let's just do that. So let's comment out our mountains. So create aligned, pass in this as the scene. Let's say we want two mountains, which we have not done yet. Let's just say texture, mountain, and scroll factor 1/4, right? So let's just see, it should create at least one mountain. That's what our code is currently doing. So we're going. Okay, so we've got one mountain. So this is good. At least we know that it is adding the image and it's showing up in our scene. So now, we have count. This is unused, you can see. So what we're going to want to do is basically create as many of these as there is count, as count suggests, or as count wants. So we're going to do it for a loop, because we want to make at least count many of these. Put that in there. Okay. So the one thing that's going to basically differ here is x, right? We want to put them next to each other. So the first case, it should be 0. And then the next case, it should be the width of the image. And then the next one, it should be the width of the image times 2. So because we have count, and count will be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, depending on what you say count is. If count is 1, it'll be 0, and then that's it. Count is 2, it'll be 0, and then 1. So we just need to know, we need to get the width of the last created image from inside this for loop. So here's what we're going to do. We can, well, there's a couple of ways to do this. So let's go with this. I'm going to go with a count, constant. Let's call this x 0. And I'm going to call this m. And so this will be x starting at 0. And then we know x should be whatever it was plus the width of the just added image. So now let's try it. And there we go. The mountain is there. Great. So now if we made 3 of them, we'll just go instead of 2. Let's say we're going to make 3. Let's move a little bit faster. Move it 10. Right, so now this somewhere here is the second image, our width times 3. Let's just say, I don't know, let's say 10. So somewhere in here is the second mountain, and then somewhere in here is the third mountain. Right, so it's just going to go seamlessly. Cool. All right. Great. I'm not going to scroll all the way back. I'll just let it restart. So this is our create aligned. And now, so there's other ways we can do this. If you would like, you can share a different way that you've thought of doing this create aligned math in the comments below. Now, to do the rest of our images here, we're going to use this create align. I'm going to delete this. We're going to use this create align method for our plateau. This, and then let's say 3 plateau, and we did half. Oh no, not create this time. So create aligned. Right. Let's get rid of this plateau. Save. Okay, so we should have 3 plateaus, and there they are. Look at that. Snazzy. Let's do the same thing now for ground. Create aligned. This, let's just say 3 grounds. Ground, and we move that 1. Oops. Look at that. That's pretty good. That's not enough grounds. So ground is moving much faster, so we need more grounds. Let's say 5 grounds. Look at that. We need more plateaus and more grounds. Okay. So what you can actually do is, I'll show you after this, how you can better determine how many of these you actually need. Okay, so let's just finish this off. So we are going to do, let's just say 3 plants. We need way more than 3 since it's moving even faster. Okay, what is the last thing? 1.25. We'll delete these plants. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're running out of plants. All right, so that's basically the parallax. So now let's just show you one way to figure out how many mountains you need, how many plateaus you need, etc. So we can get the width of the texture before you actually make it. So if you use this .textures is the texture manager. I think that's what Phaser calls it. Yep, the texture manager .get, and let's say you want to get the mountain, and then you can do get source image, which is the and this is the HTML source, the HTML element, yeah, or the render texture. That's how you made the image. Yeah, so that's how you make the texture rather. So get the source image, and then you can get width out of that, right? So now you know the width of the mountain. So let's say we're going to say total width is going to be width times 10, let's say, and then that's the width. If you do time for some math, total width divide const, let's see, mountain count, and we will use that here. Let's log this out, console.log mount count. So let's just see what it gives us. Console, it's going to be a frac 8.33, is that correct? So we're 8.33, that doesn't seem quite, well, it doesn't have to be 8 since we're going at a quarter speed. Now just thinking out loud, I'm not actually sure, but let's just say we're going to multiply by this. That may get us the right thing. 2. And I think we only needed, let's just see. So we can actually do this in our create aligned here, right? So we don't actually need necessarily to pass in a count. So let's just say, so scene.textures.get the texture that we're passing in, it could be mountains, that get source image dot width. And so let's just call this W. These are not great variable names. Then we need to know the total width. So let's just say, well, let's just say, just to have this here, right? Okay, and then, so let's see, just do that. It's generally not so great, or you generally should not reuse the parameters, the arguments being passed in your code, but we're going to do this just to test real quick. Okay, and then that. So that's actually, so that was 2.0, 2.08. So we're going to want to math.ceil most likely, so that you, because you can have more and it'll work, but if you have less, it's not going to quite work. So it's like 2.08. So it's 2 and then some. If you just do 2, you'll have that and then some as a gap. So that and then times scroll factor that we pass in. This may work, I'm not entirely sure, but then it'll be 3. And so it should work pretty well. Yeah, so like everyone seems to have enough, and we should eventually reach the end here. And we have enough, it is tiled, perhaps that's the right word. It is tiled enough so that you don't have to worry about it. So in this case, let's just delete this count because we don't need it. Although what we do want is, instead of count, let's just say total width, which is going to be the total width of the level. And then we don't need to calculate it. We do need to get that. And then down here, so let's just delete this, we will pass total width down here instead of the count, so that our create aligned method or function is going to use some intelligence and generate the number of times it needs to create the image by itself. So we're going to do anything, we're going to pass in this information, then it's just going to figure it out. What computers are great at, if you have an algorithm, they'll just do it. They won't complain. They'll do it right every single time. So there we go. Looks good. So we have enough foreground, background, and in-between elements so that we can, no matter how long our level is, it will just work. Now that's basically it. That is a parallax background in Phaser 3. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and thanks for watching.